And then now we're gonna move on mic to, are you ready right now?
Sorry, but I have second question.
Okay,
can
go ahead,
I
Mr. Lee. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. So second question is for Mr. Will Plummer. Most of Korean investors would agree that we need a trustful and long-term local partner to make successful investment in China. Given your over 15 years experience in China, can you give us some advices regarding how to find the right local partner for the Korean investors? Any tips?
Sure. I mean, I think at a first cut, there's clearly, you need to find people, I would just say just generic points of finding teams that have been in the market for a long time, and that, as I think Ty, Winston, and Ted highlighted, have a real local presence. So, back in the early days of PE investing in China, there are a lot of folks that would fly in from, the US or from other regions and make investments. And I think that era has long passed. It's so important to be in the local ecosystem. And then second, I think it's just really critical to spend time in the ecosystem doing due diligence on the partners and in the segments with whom you have conviction. I think that there are a really quite outstanding crop of VC and PE investors, and the alpha that our peers in the top quartile of VC and PE have returned has just been phenomenal. And so you want to be able to find people who are competent and have integrity. And I think that one thing is just time. So invest the time to spend with GPs and developing the relationships. Two is, and I mean this very sincerely, but is to leverage the services of folks like BCC, who understand the market and can give objective advice on reputation and on sort of the inside story of how these people do business. And then I would say just build I think one of the hardest things is to just build internal conviction on China. So you'll never have the perfect investment opportunity. There are risks in China. There are risks anywhere in VC. But if you look at folks like Yale Endowment, if you look at, folks like, UPenn Endowment, they have done so well in this investment class with real realized gains. And so you have to make this a priority in your alternative investment portfolio, spend time leveraging folks like BCC, and then really look to partner over the long run.
Finding a right partner is always a difficult work. Anyway, thank you very much for your opinion. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Lee, thank you so much right now. Now we're gonna move a mic on, it's very well known Korea's venture capitals called Korea Investment Partner. KIP's investment's been amazing, especially Mr. Hao, country manager of KIP, Korea Investment Partner China. He's been in China for past 10 years. So amazingly, when I went to Beijing, I met up with a few venture partners, venture capital partners, country managers, and then managing directors. They all spoke highly of KIP's past achievement in China. So Mr. Ho, could you introduce yourself for a little bit, and maybe 1 minute, and then move on to my question here. So how were the KIP's investment in the past, and what is your investment plans in China? So maybe you could probably showcase some of the tips that for all these VCs and PEs in Korea, and how can you be successful, just like you in KIP in China?
Sure. Okay. Good morning, and thanks for hosting this kind of opportunity to me. I am Hudson Ho, Kyung-Sik Ho, and I'm the country head of the Korea Investment Partners in China. As you can guess by our name, the Korean Investment Partners are Korea-backed VC, and we are probably number one in Korea in terms of the investment amount and fundraising size, and also the exit performance. And I myself joined KIP Korea year 2000, and 10 years ago, exactly year 08, I alone just came to China to just start the China business. At that moment, I was picked up by our company, especially we are the securities-based big company capital group. So we have a lot of networks at that moment, and we just start a China business. And our company, from scratch, we just started from myself. And gradually, we just had more talented local people. And right now, we have 28 professionals in KIP China only. And we raised around $600 million or equivalent to RMB funds. And our fund one was established year 15, and currently we are in the process of divesting. I observed many things because for the past 10 years, I only focus on the China investment, and I stay in Shanghai. And we observed that the currently market situation has dramatically changed. At the very beginning, many foreign VCs only focusing on the internet, and most of the exit market is toward the NASDAQ or the New York. But right now, the recent 5 years, especially last year and this year, the Canada government also started to boost the local capital market. And they initiated a Chang, is a kind of a new innovative market, which is the third board. China already have a main board in Shanghai, and second board in Shenzhen, which is a kind of a China NASDAQ. And the third one is the innovative board. And because of the three boards, especially the third board, and many companies are listing in the China local market. And in terms of the investment sectors, also from only a kind of a internet initiated, a kind of a consumer internet initiated market into high tech, into retails and consumers, and also biotech. So we are focusing on those various sectors, not only the internet, but recently we also focusing on the biotech, healthcare, and also retails and consumers and high tech, like semiconductors and some materials. So because of these kind of variations of the exit market and investment targets, so we are, and not only us, but many local venture capitals are rising in their fundraising. But the fundraising itself is a kind of a Pareto ratios. Only top 20 or top 20%, the excellent venture capital raised more money from the local or the foreign LPs. So because of this phenomenon, the big companies, the so-called VCs, are well on the right track, are creating the largest scale P fund, not only VC, but that also can create a kind of a lower down that the capital gain, because at the early stage, the venture capital can earn like a 3x, 5x without any difficulty. But right now, it's more slow down in terms of the capital gain ratio. But the big company raised more, and nobody in the venture capital industry is very hard to get the money. This is a huge phenomenon in China right now. And KIP ourselves recently ranked as a top 14 foreign venture capitals in China, and also generally the top 26 venture capital in China. So we are also raising a lot in China local. So our first fund is good performance, and we just have almost triple multiples, and we have 3 IPOs in Hong Kong, and 1 is in China innovative market immediately, and 2 exits by M&A. So we only invested 8 companies and already have 5 exits. So we think we are on the right track because of Hong Kong exit and China local exit. And generally, the Corona-19 is a huge impact for our venture capital industry and PE as well. And we are dealing with a untapped economy. So we recently focusing on many kind of biotech companies and also kind of a remote healthcare, the hospitals and the pharmacy, online delivery companies, and they are huge growth recently because of the Corona-19, and that will be a huge kind of a trend for the coming 2 to 3 years. And so right now we are focusing on the healthcare and the untapped economy. And all on top of it, we also have just observed that the China government have a conflict with the U.S. economy. So they are trying to develop the more materials and equipments and high-tech components. And so we are strong in understanding those sectors. In Korea, we have many successful experience in Korea in investment like semiconductor sectors. So we are start to invest that kind of robotics and semiconductors as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Huang. So speaking of your experience, it's very interesting here. As you mentioned on my conversation last time, you actually said KIP invested in a SaaS company that supports e-commerce with an SNS 2 years ago. It's very similar to Shopify in the US, Cafe24. And its market capitalization has been recognized since its listing on the Hong Kong market recently. So how would you say about this sort of the platform and then the healthcare business sectors? And what's going to be investment? What do you think about this, prospect in the future?
Yeah, sure. Platform itself is a huge opportunity in China, but everybody say that platform. But actually, we think that platform should initiate or assist a user or some big guy to participate in the game. So if they can initiate or assist the game, then it will be a platform. 2 years ago, we invested a company named Weimop. It's a Weimeng. It's very similar to the US Shopify. The moment US Shopify is already listed, and they are assisting Facebook or Google or YouTube to have e-commerce. So it's a kind of the e-commerce tools. It's a kind of SaaS company. It's not a full platform meaning, but right now the association against Amazon to have e-commerce tools, and Shopify is helping them to have an e-commerce platform. So we think the same thing will happen in China. So that moment we invested at Weimop, and Weimop was a anti-Alibaba kind of a tools. So WeChat, Tencent strongly support them. And after our investment, WeChat also invested the Weimop. And right now, WeChat is number 2 shareholders of the company and become a kind of a e-commerce platform right now. And we also invested recently a kind of a refinery, a gas station platform company. It's just the same logic. So the China already have some SOEs, but they also need a kind of a user-friendly platform. So also invested the kind of gas station, reunion app, but actually the business logic is kind of the platform who can help the user to easily find a proper gas station nearby. And the healthcare platform also, we invested online, offline, a synergy pharmacy delivery company, which is also recently grow very quickly, and also a psychiatric hospital chain, online hospital chain, which means that the patient doesn't need to go to the hospital, especially in the current Corona-19 situation. They only have some OTC drug, or even for they can meet the doctors online, and they can get the drug on the delivery from that hospital. And we invested in that kind of a platform company. This is very similar to the Wei or Ping An Good Doctor, similar. But psychiatric sector is very easy to adapt. The kind of remote the diagnostics hospital. So we invested in that company. So overall, we will just focus on that kind of a big trend. So the platform company, but also can help the real economy, not only the online based, but also the real economy can be helped by that kind of a platform.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hall. Appreciate your comments. I have actually one more question, very quick question. As you know, we say a relationship. 关系 is very important in China. So people say when it comes to China investment, there's so much regulation. How could you overcome this much regulation as a foreign investor in China for past 10 years? Maybe it was a challenge, and maybe you have some sort of tips to these investors, just as like, Thai and etc.
Sure. Yeah, it's a very good question. And I always, I myself also skeptical about those things, especially the accounting problem, because it's not transparent. And the second one is how we can bring the money back from China into Korea, because most of our money at the very beginning from Korea. So in order to solve out these two things, so we also figure out how we can find a good partners. So we just bring our local people. The first one, we have 2 in-house lawyers, and also have 2 CPAs in our company. And also we invest together with the big companies as well, the big VCs. So we collaborate with them. So we just try to mitigate that kind of the problem. But more importantly, we think a good company, we call a good company is a very good standard, I think. So if we invest in a good company, not a mediocre company, but if you invest in a good target company and try to help them, then that must be a good way to exit. And if we in a regular manner, if you just bring the money from outside, especially Korea, then it's very easy to get the money out. The problem is if you try to get the money out by just paying back the money, just like a bank, then it's very hard. But if you get the money out by IPO or by M&A, then it's relatively easy. So we already divesting our fund 1, and we already get the money out from China to Korea to our LPs. So it's not that hard. So long as you have a right target company, and that company in the capital market side is okay to go public or be merged, then money delivery is not a big issue for us. We just observed for the past 10 years. And top tier VCs, not only the Korea VCs, but especially the US VCs, have no problem about the accounting issue or some kind of regulation issue. They are more focusing on how to find out the right company. And if they have a right company and have a good exit, then money or the accounting itself is relatively the last issue for us, or not only us, but also the top tier VCs in China.
So, Mr. Hall, it's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much. Now we know the people say that think local, act global. I think your firm is doing that right now. That's why it's been very successful. So now I'm going to move a mic on Mr. Jinu Kim. Mr. Jinu Kim is a current managing director of Shenyang Securities, and he was a former head of alternative investment of a military mutual aid association. Welcome to GAIC, Mr. Kim. I think, Mr. Kim, would you briefly talk about your company and introduce yourself, about 1 minute? And Mr. Kim has a bunch of questions. And could you go ahead and ask questions to these audiences?
Well, finally, it's my turn. Hello, everybody. As Mr. Kim mentioned, I work for the Xinjiang Security Company, and I work at the investment banking division. Before joining Xinjiang Securities, I worked for the Military Mutual Aid Association as head of the Alternative Investment Department. Well, today it was a quality time to understand the Chinese industry and to witness the great comments from the real experts today. Although the Chinese market is still sitting on tremendous potential, as Mr. Lee mentioned, it is also true that the South Korean investors has a little exposure to the Chinese private equity and the VCs. For me, I've invested in the Chinese venture capital market through the global funnel fund merely when I worked for the Military Mutual Aid Association. Later on, I've met some venture fund managers in China, but it was not easy to expand. At this moment, I'll give my humble personal opinion, not an official one. I think many other domestic GPs, as well as Lindemann Asia and SV investments, also including KIP, should pay more attention to the Chinese industry. Secondly, to institutional investors, I think a more strategic approach is needed at time of the asset allocation stage. Lastly, I'm working at the security company, so this one is for the securities companies have to try quality companies in China to be listed on the Korea Stock Exchange in order to change the perception towards Chinese companies. That's my humble opinion. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Mr. Kim. I think already other investors are pretty much geared toward investing in China because of all these beautiful comments from all these panels, right? So I have a very good question to Mr. Huang Lee, CIO Lee, and then how to think about investing in Chinese VC and PEs. Do you particularly have an intention to make an investment in China?
Okay. Actually, we have so far very little proportion of investment in Chinese VC and or private equity. We have a bit of investment portion through the global GP's fund vehicle, and recently we selected on a GP who have a very active investment activities in China. So our investment proportion in China will keep increasing. But as we discussed so far, it's quite true that we still have a lot of concerns regarding like information gaps and local practices, etc. But I would like to say that we will cautiously increase our proportion in China going forward.
Sounds wonderful, sir. Do you have any question to CIO Lee from any audiences here? Or otherwise, I'm going to ask a question. So, Will, do you have a question to CIO Lee here? Could you continue if it's possible?
Yeah, I have one question. So as you mentioned that you're looking, you individually, you're getting your China exposure through global GP relationships that have a presence in China. Just curious, why to date has your firm decided not to make commitments to China-specific funds? Is it a question of too narrow an asset allocation, layering VC risk on China risk? Or is it that you haven't found the right partners and it's primarily a concern about governance within either the VC funds or China companies?
We don't have any specific reasons which prevented us from investing in China yet. The reality is we've been increasing our alternative investment portfolio quite for the past few years, meaning that we have not built up enough portfolio which can be separated in many into country level. So we invest in global, the American and European and emerging. We're investing at that level. But however, going forward, as our alternative investment portfolio is growing up on, and also our investment strategy has to be more detail oriented. I'm quite sure that in some day we will have a Chinese GP who can specialize in China investments. Did I make?
I bet that was a clear answer to you. Go ahead, Ty, please.
No, it's okay.
So maybe a very quick one. I know this is about China, but where would other regions in Asia, like Southeast Asia, rank in your mind relative to China?
As I mentioned, we are a quite early stage of making alternative investment yet. So we have, in the emerging market, we have some proportion in India and China. So we don't have much in other areas yet.
So the sentiment down here is, Mr. Lee, I have one quick question. I met quite a few head of VCs and PEs in Korea. All they're saying is that they'd like to work with the Chinese VC and PEs. On the flip side, maybe big funds, big pension funds like you, are you willing to invest quite amount of good chunk size of the investments on these co-investment opportunities? For example, between China VC and Korea VC, it could happen like this.
Yep. In principle, yes, we have a willingness to do that. Our asset size is growing, and we are looking for more investment opportunities anywhere in the globe. So we don't have any reason to rule out any areas in our investment, and especially China. As I mentioned earlier, China is a country with tremendous investment opportunities. So we are quite keen to find more investment opportunities going forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee. And then I got a very quick question to BCC co-founders, Ted, Lin, and Chang Zhao. So Ted and Chang, so start with Ted. How would you think about this year, 2020's prospects on the foreign investors on China? What do you think like this? What's gonna be a barrier? How could we change this barrier into successful investment? Ted.
So before I answer that question, I want to quickly go back to Mr. Lee just for a second. I think investment in China, India, or Southeast Asia, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? So in a sense, my experience is most of the best LPs in China, they have managed the relationship in China for many years, right? And LP has to build up its own reputation amongst the GPs. For the best GPs, they look for the best LPs, and it's a mutual relationship. And so I understand, your fund is very reputable out there, but I think for any fund to get into the China market, it will take some time to get to know the people, not only the GPs, but also colleagues, other LPs, right? The endowments from the US, the sovereign funds from other countries, get to know them, have them introduce the best GPs to you, develop the relationship, and invest in the ones that you trust the most. So it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. You'd be very easy to put money right away, but it'll be hard to build a relationship and get into the best investors out there. And so I'll say, Wells Fund is very smart in naming itself a marathon venture for the long-term return.
Thanks.
I think
it is our tagline, partnering with entrepreneurs for the long run.
Yeah, and also the LPs, right? Because from my we serve a lot of GPs, the best GPs in China, and we understand how they actually view different LPs very differently. They love to take money from, like Yale endowment and Harvard endowment, because those are really long term. They have the reputation, but they probably don't want to take money from a very rich, Chinese entrepreneurs who ask them about their return every day, right? I'm just giving an example. So building your reputation in Chinese investment community is very important. And go back to your question, Winston. I feel like, COVID-19 created a lot of global crisis, and it's going to drive some foreign investors away from China. But my understanding is there are some foreign investors who actually think it's a great opportunity to get into China when other investors are leaving, right? So my previous firm, Bessemer Venture Partners, we started in China back in 2000 or so, and then we left China in 2010 because we found that without local presence, we don't have a partner in China. It's very hard for the best entrepreneurs to work with us, right? They don't want to come to Bessemer and say, "Hey, who is your partner? Oh, your partner is in Silicon Valley. Oh, he's American, right? How do I communicate with them, right?" So in that case, we back off from investing in China. However, they started investing in China at the end of last year. And their idea is this, right? We have made a lot of great investments in the US, especially in the SaaS industry. We want to take some of our learnings into China. So what they did is they work with some of the best VCs in China, where they will put in money, and they will also take some know-hows from the best SaaS companies in the US to China, right? So their competitive advantage is not really they understand China, but their competitive advantage is they know the know-hows from the US SaaS companies industry and move them to China, where they work with the local VCs investing in China. So I feel like there are opportunities if you pick them up, and we are very actively helping them, right? We do management background check. We also help them with understanding the market. For example, I think Mr. Ho mentioned about the investments in the China version of Shopify, which is something that Bessemer is looking at. So we also introduce some experts for them to speak to. So my take is, when people are scared, there will be opportunities out there. So find the best team and try to work with them. But it takes some time to get to know the team better.
Okay, thank you so much, Ted. That was a very good comment. And then, so my next question is going to go to Mr. Kim Ji-nu, former MMMI, the CIO, head of alternative investment. And Mr. Kim, are you interested in making an investment in China? I mean, you're in the position where you're managing, I don't know, probably more than US $10 billion when you were with the military fund, right? So what was the obstacle? And if you are in that position again, and you just recently left the position, I know you have a lot of connection there too. So are you willing to make an investment there?
Yes, yes. Why not? I think I'm afraid I should push aggressive at that time. More increase the exposure to the Chinese, including China, to the emerging market. So I think it's a good opportunity.
Question to BCC founder CEO Chang. Chang, are you there right now? Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Chang. I have a quick question here. You created a structured research data, like I think it was like 10 years ago, on behalf of U.S. investors, especially hedge fund clients, right? So according to your data set and technologies, I think it has accuracy of 2%, less than 2%, when you are predicting, the earnings probably 2 months before the earnings shows like this. So how would you say about this, first of all, pandemic crisis for coronavirus? And second, I would say, right now, a lot of U.S., a lot of Chinese companies are not really willing to go to NASDAQ because of the regulation, and then bad relations between China and U.S. right now. So how would you advise, Chinese, Korean investors and the opportunities here? Could you actually explain a little bit that, please?
Okay. So as I understand it, the question actually has two parts. One is how are specific Chinese industries handling the COVID-19 crisis? And I think our data shows that the obvious winners during this pandemic crisis are the industries that are able to adapt itself to a more distributed and decentralized role. So obviously, industries such as takeout, anything that favors distributed working spaces, remote working, remote entertainment such as Tencent, ByteDance, Alibaba, e-commerce, Meituan, came out well ahead of the rest of the traditional enterprises in this method. And the second, I think, would be part of your question is the larger question of what is going to happen to the China-based, ADRs that's currently listed in the U.S. that's facing tougher regulatory issue. And I think to answer that, I think we need to put that in the bigger context of the current trade conflict between China and the U.S. So I think the current consensus amongst all the panelists here is that this is a structure issue, right, between China and the U.S. This is not something that's likely to blow over with another administration. This is actually fundamental to the psyche and also the makeup of the two countries, that there will be some sort of a conflict either in trade, commerce, intellectual property, or in more heated space that's coming up. I think all of us kind of see it. We see the underlying issues, and I think the current pandemic actually offers us another glimpse into the insight, which is how either China or U.S. Is equipped in its internal infrastructure in dealing with crisis, right? So China currently is also facing unemployment issues, as well as much of the same population issues that the U.S. is currently facing. However, I would argue that if you just turn on the news, or if you actually visit China and the U.S., you will see two sets of very different responses and two different sets of roles that the government is playing in leading the economy, as well as managing to resolve issues and problems. I think one can make the argument that the current U.S. issues are problems of particular leadership. However, I think that is overlooking the inherent infrastructural cracks that has been there long before, and this is only acting as a catalyst in bringing out these long-standing issues that has been ignored under the rug of prosperity. So I think ultimately, PE and VC investors face a larger issue than most secondary market investors, in that they are forced to invest with a longer period of illiquid assets vis-a-vis a hedge fund or a mutual fund. And you have to ask that in light of the current environment, which country do you think is more likely to provide a term of stability in that interim period, right?
Yeah, Chang, it was a very crystal clear answer. Thank you so much right now. Very unfortunately, we're running out of little time right now. We have to finish up. But we're going to have, we're a partner of KG Group. And KG's Group going to hold another offline event to September 17, 2020. Hopefully, we're not going to have any travel restrictions in September. Hopefully it's going to be lifted. And then we would like to have another offline exhibition and a seminar there. We hope we can invite everybody over here to South Korea, and not just using a Zoom, face-to-face discussion could be held. And then if you have no other questions, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. So finally, I'd like to say, China is a good place. China is a good place. It's a good investment hub. It has a lot of population. Consumer retail is still there, and it's attracting a lot of different investors, from overseas. I think the information is a key thing that we always have to think about. Okay, and thank you so much, not ladies, gentlemen, and appreciate your participation. I look forward to seeing you face to face in very, very near future.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.